Welcome to the Integrate This EdTech Podcast. I'm Jeremy Mikla, joined by David Berner, co-host of the program. And we are delighted to have two different guests with us here today, although they know each other, and I think they know each other pretty well. We have Shira Woolf Cohen, and we have Alicia Woolf. And if you notice the Woolf last name, it is because they are sisters. And off the before we started here, you described, I think, Alicia, you said sisters first and business partners second for sure. And I think that'll, definitely see some similarities and maybe some contrast as your styles come out here on the program here today. But just a little bit of background. Shira is an education and workforce development leader, a professional learning facilitator, author of Future Focused Schools, co-founder of Innovageous. Did I say that correct?
Yes, of course.
Nice. And a number of other things that I'm sure you can help describe here in just a moment too. But your sister Alicia, she also is a co-founder of Innovageous, but in addition to that, has her roots as a special education leader, board certified behavior analyst, and an inclusive education strategist. So Alicia and Shira, welcome to the program here today. Would one of you want to kick off a little bit of kind of giving us a brief background into your journey through the education space?
Yeah, I'm happy to chime in. I'll also give a quick tip for everyone that's listening. The word innovageous, it does get mispronounced a lot, but it is the combination of innovative and courageous as one word, a word that we created on our own, made it up. So it's an easy way to remember it. So I'm so excited to be here with Alicia today on your podcast. So I'm Shira Woolf Cohen. I actually started working in the education and workforce space as a college student. If we back up even a little further, I was a terrible high school student and I really didn't like going to high school. I barely scraped by. I applied to one college, but I was really awesome in my out of school time programs and my summer camp and leadership experiences. And so I knew I wanted to be a teacher. I just knew it wasn't the types of teachers that I always had. And so I spent a lot of time in workforce development and education, leading summer career development programs for young people, working with employers, and then stepping into being a math teacher and a vice principal and a principal and then out of school time leader. And in that space, I worked to make sure that every young person was prepared for what's next, building service learning programs, social emotional learning programs, career development programs as part of my school leadership role, because I knew that every young person had an opportunity for their future. And so after spending 19 years in one school community, I thought what we were doing there was what everyone was doing, but that's actually not the case. And so partnered up with Alicia and with our third co-founder, Joanna, who is also like a sister. And we started Innovageous with a mission to ensure continuity of learning and inclusive opportunities for all young people. And we really do that by building the capacity of adults to implement innovative and courageous solutions in education. And Alicia and I have known each other obviously our whole lives, but the idea of preparing young people for their future for both of us started when we were young people. And I know Alicia will tell you more about that. But it's something that we integrate into our work with all schools, all young people every single day, because there's so much potential and purpose out
there. Yep. Like Shira alluded to, I started my journey to being in education before I was done being a student. I actually was a government and politics major. I went to college for that. And then one summer, Shira was like, come join camp and be a camp counselor. And I was like, sure. And the rest is really history. But what was really important to me was that I was working one-on-one with a child with autism at that out of school time opportunity over the summer. And I just fell in love with working in education, working with kids, and specifically working with students with disabilities. And so I changed my major. I went into education and I became a teacher. I worked for several years as a teacher, got into a fellowship program and became a special education specific leader. became a national director of special education for a large teacher prep organization, and then really found my passion in teaching adults how to be great leaders, great teachers. And so from there, I also got certified to be a behavior analyst. And so a lot of folks associate that with working with kids with autism, and I did do that. But I also really love to work with adults in helping with making sure that teachers have inclusive opportunities in the school spaces that they work in, that all adults have inclusive opportunities in their employment places. And that's where my behavior analysis comes into play. I also worked for a district, a large district right outside of DC. And so from there, like Shira said, we started Innovageous, and I was really pulled in that direction, to like you had started, it was always a dream of mine. And I think of Shira's to work together as sisters. And so, that really was important for us to bring, and like Joanna, who's our third co-founder, is like a sister, to bring our shared values together in this really mission-driven way to start Innovageous. So innovative and courageous, those are our two values that we were like, all right, well, it makes sense to be called Innovageous then. And so, yeah, I think that's really where a lot of my experience as being an inclusive specialist, making sure that, I bring a lot of passion and my values to the table, and, that all kind of came together into Innovageous.
Yeah. Let's give a shout out to Camp Girard. So Camp Girard is the camp that I was the camp director at. Joanna was actually assistant camp director at, and Alicia was one of the counselors. So that's where actually our true friendship blossomed at this point almost 20 years ago.
Mm.
Yeah, I know a lot of teachers that have gotten really their kind of feet wet being camp counselors, and at all sorts of different type of outdoor adventure type camps. And I think it just really translates really great people skills into the wanting and the desire to want to shape the education of kids.
1,000%. We say all the time that there are so many educators and leaders that came out of the camp that we were a part of. And they're sprinkled not just all over Philadelphia, but like all over the East Coast and all over, even to the fact where we went to a school the other day and bumped into a parent of an old camper who was just mind blown that we were continuing to work together and continuing to do this work, which is so crazy.
So as you've been doing this for a little while, and can you give us a little insight into Innovageous and like how that correlates to preparing students for the concept of future ready? We've been, we hear that term a lot, but also like what comes up a lot recently is like preparing students, like what skills should students have when they leave high school, right? So you'll hear like profile of a graduate, or now we have like Jeremy and I were just at ISTE, and so there's a pretty big emphasis on profile of an AI ready graduate and things like that. So as you kind of look at the impact that you want to have on students, and particularly like not just college going students or like CTE, but your whole method is to make sure you're reaching all students. So how do you do that as far as like working with staff to make sure that students are future ready?
Yeah, I'll start, and I'm sure Alicia has some ideas too, but I think like one of the things that we recognize is that being a school that is future focused and preparing every student for what's next doesn't actually mean that we are teaching students about specific careers or pathways that they should be taking, right? It's about preparing them for navigating like this world that's coming, that's continuing to change, with careers that we don't know that are even out there. And when we actually ask, educators about what skills are most important for young people to thrive, we're hearing things around adaptability, communication, critical thinking, using, their intellect to think through kind of higher learning, having agency of their own learning, managing their time, right? It's kind of amazing. None of those things that people are saying right off the bat are around, they need to learn how to add, they need to learn how to write a 5-paragraph essay, right? And so when we're working with schools and districts, we're not just working to say, yes, we need to have these academic scores go up. We're also working with them to say, how are we ensuring that young people know who they are, that they know what their strengths are, they know what their areas that they want to improve on, they know how to access resources to be able to learn more on their own, right? We are also thinking about young people and students as whole people, as leaders of today that are also leading to the future. And it's not just about saying this group of young people are college going, and so let's put them in AP classes and dual enrollment classes. And these students, right, maybe they are on a CTE pathway and they're going to go into the trades. Like, we can't be and should not be bucketing young people into these pathways this early. And so when we are working with schools and districts, we're working on building the systems to identify where preparation and future readiness takes place intentionally in their school. And we're working to make sure that every single educator in that building is demonstrating a mindset every single day with young people that show them that what we're learning and what we're doing is, yes, important for today in this course, but even more important for the future and for those connections. And that actually can't just be the career counselor. It actually has to be a lot of people. And so we do it in a really comprehensive way, which reflects our mission around continuity of learning, right? And making sure that that learning is not just happening in the classrooms, but is bridging that gap, and is not just happening for a specific group of kids, right? And that inclusive piece, it's for all students. And so that's just a start of like what that future focused school that prepares every student for their future has, and a little bit of why it connects. But I think the inclusivity piece is really important about that. I'll let Alicia talk more around that, but I think that's really key to this, because it's so many people are thinking about certain subgroups of students and not thinking every young person has the right and should be responsible for thinking about who they are and what their future holds.
So can I just cut in just a second? Just a follow-up question. I just was curious, like, is kind of the approach to have multiple ways that students can access all those different skills? So you mentioned a couple different things like soft skills, having opportunities to explore things like college or CTE, other opportunities. Is one of the big approaches is just to give access to all students, like in those different areas?
1,000%. Access is in a very basic level, right? Saying this isn't just about one group of students or certain students who are, gifted, or certain students who are headed into trades. This is about every single student. And it starts in a very basic way of saying, we need to make sure this is accessible. I think inclusivity and making sure we're having efforts to be inclusive in that it goes beyond the access, for sure.
Yeah, I think I was going to say it's not just about access, right? Access is the first step, but true inclusion means that students can engage with it, that it's integrated into the programming of the school, right? So when Shira's talking about, she just mentioned, really taking a look at the systems and trying to see where this future-focused mindset or systems can be built out. A lot of the times we'll start with, or schools will ask us to take a look at like their career counseling or like a center, or work with a specific person. And what we find is that the skills can't be taught in isolation and shouldn't be taught in isolation. And so we're like, okay, so even though this person has been put in charge of maybe CTE or the building a portfolio that students have to have, for example, in Pennsylvania, we have to find other spots that create that continuity across the day, where other content areas can connect these soft skills, like you mentioned, into their own content area, because kids can't just see it in one space. I think the other thing that's really important here is special education teachers have been required to do this for years, for decades. It's part of the law. And so there's a space for that. We often will ask schools and districts to say, what is your special education department doing? What kinds of tools and systems are already in place that your special education students are working on? Because at age 14 in some states, but definitely by 16 in every across the country, kids are required to have what's called a transition plan. Like they have to start planning for what's after high school. And it's not just about college. It's like anything after high school, from housing to job skills to if they want to go to college. And so these things are already in place in schools. And the idea of getting kids ready and making sure that they have these job skills or just life skills is not a new concept. And so I think it's really important that we realize that there's strengths to build from, and there's other people in the building that also have been doing this for a long time. And there's probably already some things to build from. And so I think that as we are looking at schools and talking to schools or talking out of school time programs, we're really just trying to build connections is really the start as well. Shira, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And I think I'll just stamp again, like so many times we are looking first at general ed and saying like, where are the starting points in there that we can even carry over to other, subgroups. And I think in this case, there is just such a unique space to say like students with IEPs have been required, right? We've been required to plan for students and their transitions, and we can absolutely take a page out of that book and say what we're doing for students with IEPs in transition and that planning. We also should be pulling that into our regular education and our programming there. And again, that's not one person's responsibility. It really is starting with a system and then building a mindset across the school.
Yeah, and I like it resonated a lot what you were saying, both of you, but then particularly Shira, when you had mentioned like not putting students in particular categories or things like that. Because like thinking back to my own high school, like I wasn't a very serious student. Like I didn't know, I didn't really know what was available or anything. It wasn't serious at all. But then like college, I was like going for my bachelor's and then into my master's, like very, very serious. And so it was a big shift for me, just learning about what I could do or was capable of. So I really like that, it's like exposing students. And I don't think we really know what all students are capable of. Just thinking about my own experience, where it's like, I had no idea what I could do back then,
Yeah. And let's be clear, like the fact that we have young people who are using college as the time to figure out what they're good at and what they want to do is backwards. That is a large ticket for exploring, right? And so spending $40,000, $60,000, $80,000 a year to do some of the work that, quite frankly, our K-12 should be doing with young people so that they can make informed decisions about post-secondary is really important, because we have so many young people who are, number one, starting college, big ticket item, not finishing, still have all of their loans and a lot of debt, right? And we also have young people who are going in saying like, I want to go to these schools for these names, right? Or for someone else I know went there, and they maybe are not the best match for them, whether support-wise, financial-wise, and maybe they graduate, maybe they don't, but they are winding up with so much deficit in their learning, in their life experience, in their financial stability. And so our responsibility as schools, and as quite frankly, not just schools, as an education ecosystem, to do that preparation and start that preparation. No one's saying you should not go to college knowing, I know not everyone's going to say, I exactly know what I want to do. But going into college with no idea of what you're thinking about in the future is not the right step either. And so there is this, in between space where schools really, and the education ecosystem of community partners, out of school time programs, faith-based organizations really need to work together to make sure that our young people, when they graduate high school, are making informed decisions that will have the best impact on their life and on the future of their career.
Yeah, and I think you make a really good point here. And as educators, we need to make sure that we have our focus towards that future of where our students are going to be as well, right? And so I guess as part of that, we've it's fallen upon the counselors, the CTE teachers, to kind of have that focus here, but really it should be all educators. And so I guess, if we look at it from that perspective, what should a classroom teacher be doing to help not just supplement and throw in little tidbits here and there, but to make sure that they are focused on helping to prepare students for those decisions that are going to need to be made, by the time that they're graduating from high school?
I think we were just talking about this yesterday too, Shira. Teachers are asked to do so much, right? And just when they're like, okay, I got this curriculum down, they're like, okay, now add something else, and they're like, oh, it's a lot of work to be a teacher right now. I think what's important to know is, like, you don't have to add anything else. You don't have to, like you said, have these bite-sized supplements that may or may not actually make an impact. I would say the first step is to be able to look at what you're currently doing and see if there's any connection to some of those soft skills. Like, it's not adding more, it's just going back and re-looking at what you're doing and seeing if, this lesson actually, I can teach a student some leadership skills in this, or like speaking skills, or advocacy, right? And so it's really just looking at it through a lens with maybe a couple questions in mind. And I think, Shira, you've done a lot of work in, naming what those questions and mindsets are. But I think, first and foremost, I know we're putting a lot on teachers' plates these days. And I think I want to emphasize that it's not extra. It's just looking at it with a new perspective.
Yeah. I think that's, thank you, Alicia. I want to start by saying that the things that we're about to share and some of the ideas actually aren't about setting aside 45 minutes to do a lesson. They are about the actions that teachers and educators are doing every single day that demonstrate a future-focused mindset. And what we mean by that is they're demonstrating a mindset that shows young people that what we're learning today is not just important for today, but is important for your life. And so we actually have, we've identified 9 specific things that are actions that teachers can take in their classroom. And none of these are about integrating and having a new lesson or finding a new curriculum. And we've actually done this as a walkthrough with school leaders, where we've said we're going to go into classrooms, and we're going to collect evidence of if we see these things happening, right? And what we found was when we see these things happening, which I'll share in a minute, students are more engaged and they see relevance in their learning. And isn't that the goal for all of us, that we want our young people to feel those two things so that they can be, agents of their own learning? And so those things that we identified, and I'll just rattle them off real fast so we have like some ideas, are things like students having jobs in their classroom, right? Having a role to help be part of a system in that classroom, whether that's being the warmer up who puts on music as the DJ, whether that's being the paper passer outer, whether that's being the person who does the sweep afterwards, right? Like having roles in the classroom. We also can have visuals around the classroom that are not just about like, here's the anchor chart on how you add fractions with unlike denominators, but here's careers that use fractions, right? We can have visuals around the room. We can also call young people by professional names, right? When students are doing a science experiment and going through that scientific process, instead of calling them students or scholars, we can call them scientists. If we have students that are out there and they're talking to others and they might be interviewing people, they might be documenting and writing articles, we could call them reporters, right? And so we can use this kind of language. We can name social emotional skills. I'm not saying we have to set aside time to teach those skills, but when we see a student who really managed their emotion or demonstrated a growth mindset, let's say it to students, right? Let's make sure they know, and let's highlight their strengths, right? So many times I'm blown away, and maybe that's because I was a straight C student in high school, but how is it that when a student gets a 75, on a test, we start with the 25% they got wrong instead of the 75% they got right? And so we have these things, again, none of them is setting aside time. A lot of them is about making connections to those soft skills, durable skills, cross-sector skills, whatever you want to call them, naming student leadership, being able to say, this career often uses the topic that we are studying today in very micro ways so that students start to see those connections, right? None of these are about adopting a curriculum, jumping on an EdTech product, being able to set aside time. It's integrated. And these are the mindsets and the actions that we hope that teachers demonstrate every day that show young people the importance of the learning they're having.
Yeah, so I think you're kind of hitting on what one of my follow-up questions was going to be here, and is, when we think of preparing students for what that life after high school is going to be, we focus on what high school teachers should be doing. And I think many of these examples that you just mentioned fit very seamlessly into the types of things that our elementary teachers are doing all the time.
Mm-hmm. That's right. We can't be asking young people what they want to be when they grow up, right? That is not the question. The question starts in a very young age, right? When I was a school leader, we had kindergarten, first, second graders learning about community helpers, going on career-connected field trips to learn about the firehouse, to understand the different people that worked in the doctor's office, to understand what it took to maintain a park, right? These things aren't about preparing students for their future. Preparation happens after they become aware, they've had a chance to be exposed, they've had a chance to explore, right? And so you are absolutely right. If we are waiting till high school to start these conversations, we've missed the boat on helping young people develop who they are and who they want to be, what their potential is and what they're passionate about, what their purpose is going to be. And those are things that really happen starting in a very young age for young people. Young people have a voice and they want to give back, and we can start that very early on.
Yeah, that's right. I think you can't ask the question, what do you want to be when you grow up, if they don't know what's out there to answer. Like, they know maybe a few, like firefighter, right? Like basketball player, right? Like, the ones that, like, the ones that come to mind, teacher, right? Because they see teachers every day. But like, even with my 7-year-old, I'll say, hey, did you know that there's somebody who studies rocks, because he loves rocks, as many 7-year-olds do, right? I'm like, did you know that there's people that study rocks and they're called geologists? And he's like, no, I didn't. And so, like, that was just a career conversation I had with him. No further really than that, but now he's calling himself a future geologist. And so it's interesting, and it doesn't have to be a heavy lift, but it does start younger than high school for sure. And like I mentioned earlier, in the special education world, by law, it has to happen before high school. So it's interesting to me that this is now a conversation that's starting to come beyond the walls of just, working with students with disabilities. It's not about, like, we have to start early because of they're in special education. It's like, no, we need to start early with everybody so that they are aware of how to answer that question. What do you want to be? Before they're asked.
Yeah, I want to add.
Go right ahead, please do.
I was just going to add in one thing that's just like, we actually don't know what the careers are that are going to be around. Like when my beautiful nephew Leon is going to be an adult, like, we have no idea what careers could come up. So I also just want to say to adults that are listening, like, yes, young people are going to say they want to be basketball players, they want to be influencers, right? There's all these big things that they want to be, and instead of saying, like, no, you're not going to be that, let's actually look at what it takes to become that career, and then backwards plan to say, that's great. You want to be an influencer, right? Influencer requires you to be able to tell stories, to be creative, to be someone that initiates their own time, right? There's so many things. We don't need to say, like, oh, you're not going to be that. We can just say, like, that's a great aspiration. Let's talk about and let's think about what it takes to get there, right? Because 20 years ago, someone would have said, like, oh, I want to be an influencer. And that wouldn't have been, people would have laughed. They would have been like, you're not going to make money off that. But like, fun fact is that Alicia and I have a brother who's an influencer, and that's like, he's a writer, an influencer. He is out there, and he is creative, and he is focused, and he has to be innovative, and he has to manage his own time, and he has to write his own content, right? Like, there are so many things that young people can aim to be, and we don't have to put it down. We can just say, like, great, let's foster the skills, because those skills get applied to lots of other things.
I think I remember my own son when he was probably that 7 or 8 year old age, and he said, "Dad, I really love science and engineering and sports." And so he developed his own. I think he called it a Syngineer sport.
That's
And
cool.
where he wanted to kind of, his career path and future was going to be all about combining those things together.
Sure.
You know, and
Yes.
I just thought that was really cool. And I remember then when he started applying for colleges, he worked that into some of the essays and stuff that he did. And just, you know, I think it showed people that how he's got this diverse things so that he's been able to explore, and how he's going to try to apply that going forward. So what you both were kind of talking about here, I think is about creating these opportunities for students to be able to explore without feeling that you have to pressure them into one track at some point, right?
Sure.
That's right.
Sure. And, you know, some of the skills that we named, right? Like, let's say even being a geologist, you have to know about science, and, you know, you have to be able to maybe, you know, climb to different areas, or be able to travel the world, or whatever it is. Some of those talents are not just about that one career. You can translate anywhere, right? So it's just about like going with what they're interested in, helping them identify what are the skills that need to be there. And then maybe they don't end up being that. But you know what? A lot of those skills are transferable anyway. You have to be organized in many different trades that you go into anyway. So
That's right.
And just one more question here on this topic here is so a teacher that wants to be able to create those opportunities for their students in their classroom, you know, is there a way that they can leverage education technology? And my brain is going to
you
AI.
read my mind. You read my
Yes,
mind.
I'm trying to set
give
this
some
up.
shout outs. Yes.
Yeah. So here's one to set up. How can teachers, you know, leverage some of those technology advances that we can use to, you know, kind of without creating more burdens or more work for teachers, but just to do it naturally included in the things that they're doing?
Yeah. I'm going to start talking a little bit about some particular tools, but I think we also at Innovageous recognize that the implementation of EdTech, sometimes there's a gap between the intended implementation and the actual implementation. And we have been doing some work around that too, to make sure that when schools adopt, right, they're going through the right process. But when we think about careers, there is so many ed tech products that are out there. So I'm gonna give a few shout outs, right? So gonna shout out Zello. I just came back from Zello's Future World Conference as a content partner leading a district and state convening. And they are really working to not just have their product and their tool be something that is, you know, here's your 45 minutes to do this. They're really trying to build the ecosystem that surrounds that tool so that it feels more implemented and comprehensive. And so I give them a shout out. But we have an intentional partnership with a new product that's called Orchard Careers, and it is an AI-powered career advising tool. And what I think first sets it apart is exactly what we were just talking about, that there are so many interests of young people. We as teachers don't have the knowledge to be able to know what's out there or to be able to access all the careers. And so Orchard Careers, while it has some great career advising tools and planning tools and a career readiness index, one of the things that really spoke to me was the idea that it is also a research tool. So as a teacher, if I am teaching Algebra 2 and I am launching a topic or a unit and I want to find a hook for my young people, I can go into Orchard, give information about the objective that I'm teaching, and it's going to help me identify careers that match it. It's going to give me firsthand videos from career professionals, right? All that sort of stuff. And so I want to shout those two out because I think they are really working to not be a set aside, but to be an integrated tool that teachers use that don't require teachers to have to really do a lot of intellectual prep. They can seamlessly integrate, and they can be an added value, not a substitute for what they're doing. And so I think those are some tools that are out there that we know and we work with and we want to name, but also recognizing that it's not just about the tool, right? It is about the way that the school is adopting it, implementing it. And so I know Alicia's going to share about that framework that we've developed as well.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think as we've been, just naturally in the education space for a while, but especially in the past couple of years, there's been this big boom of EdTech, and what we've seen is a lot of adoptions of EdTech, and then it kind of peters out, or it's not as implemented. There's an excitement maybe from the top. It's purchased, and then there's an excitement of using it in the first couple months, or maybe even the first year, and then after that, it's just not integrated, or the teachers are not exactly sure how to integrate it, or it's a lot of work to learn. And so we have really kind of brought to the attention of some of the companies and of schools around okay, so first there's a readiness, there has to be a readiness for that product. And then there needs to be some onboarding that happens right in the first couple of weeks. But then the true integration that happens is where is this product living in the reality of the work, right? It's not something that you have to be excited about all the time to be able to implement, or you have to really be geared up to have as a separate time in your day to do. It really needs to fit into the system. And then it needs to be sustainable, beyond the people that purchased it. And so I don't know, Shira, if you have other thoughts around how that could fit into future focused mindset and making sure that we're being really intentional about the EdTech products that we're putting into schools and for kids.
Yeah. I mean, I think so many schools are, most districts have adopted an EdTech platform to support future readiness. And in most cases, what happens is the students have their 20-minute period a day or one time a week that they are responsible for doing the activities in the platform. And the teachers oftentimes see it as a time to check their email or to do something else, instead of seeing and positioning themselves as the facilitator of the use of this product and making sure that we're seeing it more beyond just, hey, I did it, to I did it, and what I learned is going to inform this, that, or the other, right? And so just to recognize that this is not just the responsibility of EdTech products to make sure that their EdTech products are being used right, but it's also the responsibility of schools and leaders to make sure that they are, ready for the product, that they are confident in what they got as onboarding, and that they're providing guidance for, their teachers and how to integrate so it can be sustainable.
And as you've worked with schools, with teachers, and you kind of help design things, do you see a real shift from a move from just students being compliant and just kind of doing what they're told to do in that type of system? Do you see a shift over to where they have more opportunities to explore purpose and be engaged and figure out what actually resonates with them?
Yeah.
1000%.
Yeah. I think we have to go in that direction if regardless. I know we talk right now, we talk a lot about generational differences, and this current generation of kids is on all the time. And what I mean by that is that's there's things going on all the time that they're interacting with. And if we go and we say let's just sit in the classroom and listen to a teacher talk about these things for the next 6 hours, I've actually seen it. Kids actually physically get up and just won't do that anymore at all. And I would say that's something that as we integrate tools into the classroom, we have to think about how are we engaging students, because they're not just sitting there. They won't just sit there and get the information anymore. And so I think it's really important that they're interacting with the tools, that students are the ones that are in the seats, are in the driver's seat of some of these tools. At the same time, we need to be really careful and cautious about what we're putting in front of our students. And I think there's lots of districts that are coming out with policies on screen time and AI, but I also think that the responsible use does involve students being able to interact with EdTech, because that is what they're going to be doing in the future in their workspaces. Like, workspaces right now and across the world are full of technology. And so we have to give these tools to students to be able to interact with them and learn the skills to use them as well.
So how do we treat this then? Because I think this follows, but if you have a student that says, they're learning something in class, right? And they say, when am I ever going to use this? Like, is that like a resistance thing, or is that a legitimate design question?
Shira, I feel like you have
yeah, I think it's a legitimate design question. I think us as educators thinking through, not just in our intellectual prep, right? And so there's two things. Obviously, our educators are lesson planning. And actually, in a lot of cases these days, they're not lesson planning because the lesson plans are written for them. But what they actually need to do is they need to digest it. They need to process it. They need to think about how it applies to their specific setting. And so, yes, asking how they can use this in their future is the larger question. But there are more detailed questions around the strengths of our students and how we can pull that out during this lesson. Right? There are more questions around the skills that students will need to complete the task that we can uplift and highlight, right? And so those are the more deep questions around more, obviously it's focused on how it's connected, but how we're fostering something now that's connected for their future. And so I think that's really key for our educators to not just be thinking about what are my needs of students in understanding this math concept or being able to complete this assignment, but digging in further to say, like, not whether or not they'll be successful, but what do they need to be successful and what do they have versus what do I need to foster so that they can be successful in navigating this larger assignment, in tackling this word problem, in being able to understand the directions for the science experiment. Those are the more design questions that we can be asking that lead to the connections. Oftentimes when we ask that design question that you started with around where do students use this in their future, teachers struggle to answer that question without saying, like, in a one sentence answer, or saying, like, you might have this scenario. Instead, when we dig into those skills, we know we're fostering them and they can be used from topic to topic.
Yeah, I would answer with not the content, like, how am I going to use this in the future? It's about the skills you're using to do whatever content it is, right? Like, this is a really hard math problem, and you're like, there's times, no matter what you're doing, that you're going to have to persevere, right? And so it's often not about the content the way I would say I would answer. Like, if a student asked me that, and I have been asked that, I was a math high school teacher. And I would say it's actually not really about the actual problem. It's about the fact that you keep going, and that, not every problem that you're going to have is going to be one that you can solve right away. And so really uplifting some of those skills. And most of the time that was accepted as a pretty good answer, and we would keep going. And then we would talk not about, did you solve the problem, but like, what did you do to be able to keep going? And that teaches them a little bit more about themselves. And, adolescents like to talk about themselves too. So,
when I was in the classroom too, and David and I both come from our background as social studies teachers, I remember being in my classroom and feeling like I had control over what was going to take place in that space, because I knew it best, for myself, and I just projected that onto my students. I think I was very tunnel visioned in that outlook. But really, I think one of the things, if I could go back, and what I would try to do, is to build more partnerships outside of my classroom walls. And really try to, like we were talking about here just a moment ago, is finding those different ways to bring these different opportunities to students to explore outside of the walls of the school. And it really comes down then to being able to build those partnerships with other businesses, industry, nonprofits, community groups that exist in our communities. And so, I look at it, what can a school really do to try to strengthen those partnerships between the school and those community organizations?
I'm just going to say this. Partnerships are non-negotiables for schools. Like I say we, meaning like I put my school leader hat on to say like, we cannot do it alone. When I was a school leader, we had partnerships with parents. We had partnerships with community members. We had partnerships with government officials. We had partnerships with community-based organizations. We had partnerships with different companies, right? We had so many partnerships because my teacher simply couldn't do it alone. And I don't think they should have to. And so I think the first thing I will say is that it's really important to know that there is not one right answer for what a partnership looks like. There is a continuum of partnerships that could start very simply at a touch point, right? A literal connection, meaning some examples could be a firefighter coming and talking to your second grade class, right? Taking your students to a field trip that highlights in some of the employees that are there, right? There could be some simple connections, all the way to having a collaborative partnership, which we've seen where schools and a nonprofit, or schools and an out-of-school time provider, or schools and a industry partner literally partner ahead of time to plan out a unit of study, where that unit of study has shared responsibility in teaching, shared responsibility in where students are learning. And that happens between the partner and the school. And so I think for schools, something to keep in mind is that one of the first resources that they can learn from and partner with is families. Families have they have careers, they have hobbies, they are business owners, they're community members. And so I always say, like, one of the first steps in building partnerships is finding out who your families are, what their hobbies are, who they work for, right? What their careers are, so that we can start to tap into them. And the second thing I'll say is schools really need to do that in a coordinated way. Thinking from the partnership perspective, there is a lot of partnership burnout when schools or teachers are not coordinated, right? The principal says, hey, everyone in my school, every teacher, here's a list of all of our career partners, right? And every teacher is reaching out to them separately to coordinate something. That also doesn't lead to strong impact and strong relationships. So number one, starting with families, and number two, making it a coordinated effort so that your partners don't feel burnout. And we take things off of our teacher's plate. Not every teacher has to reach out to this a certain doctor's office or dentist's office that does tours for students. There's maybe one coordinator who is the reach out that says, actually, I already had 3rd and 5th grade do this, so we've asked him as much as we can. And so just a few tips that I wanted to share.
And I'll say, I know that we talked about like making sure that things are not siloed, that every teacher is a career teacher, but also there are certain folks in school buildings, they might be called different things in different places, but that is part of their job, is to build community engagement, community partnerships. And so coordinated also means that there can be like a leader who's coordinating those things. Like in Maryland, we have community schools. And so there's like community school liaisons or coordinators. There's Title I schools usually have somebody who is, in charge of building partnerships specifically. And then, like I mentioned earlier, in special education, there might not be one per building, but in many places there's like a transition, they call it transition, coordinator who is supposed to be building partnerships with community organizations that are specifically to support students with disabilities, but that doesn't mean they can't share like with other people in the building and build that in a coordinated way with another school leader. So I think that there are people in certain schools that also are probably actively or can be actively coordinating this as well.
As I'm listening to your responses here, that this popped into my head, and then I'll ask the question first, and then I'll kind of like follow up with it a little bit here too. At what age should a student begin their LinkedIn page?
Oh my gosh. I actually love this question. I've never been asked
the
this.
reason I'm asking is like, one, are resumes like and CVs a thing of the past, and two, by making these connections earlier on, are students really setting up a network for themselves
Yeah.
that will help continue whatever they decide to do after high school, right? That continuity of their education.
Yeah. Well, first of all, my mom has I just wrote on my to-do list for my daughter when she gets back to start her LinkedIn page.
Well, your daughter is way older than my kids, so yeah.
That's right. So I'll be clear, my daughter is 16 and a half. And so she also has been like, I don't just do this work for work. I like literally do this work in my life. And so my daughter has, since she was 5 years old, been sewing and creating. And now she teaches sewing and she makes things and she gets designs and she creates her own designs, right? And like, so she's got a lot going on in terms of her marketing, communication, fashion design. But that stuff has been happening from very early. But when I think about LinkedIn, I was just trying to think about who I'm connected to, and I actually am connected to some high school students who were my past students and are now in their high school flexing a lot of their leadership muscle, running, clubs and things like that. But now that you ask that, LinkedIn is where we're making a lot of connections too, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, what is the purpose of our young people and encouraging them to have flat resumes that might not get out seen versus having them building a live, breathing LinkedIn profile that shows all the work that they're doing regularly? And so you're also pushing some of my thinking around how we might use LinkedIn. I would say age appropriate for me would be the same age appropriate in using other social media platforms because it is social media. Mm-hmm. But I think this, as LinkedIn, it would have a different purpose for our young people. That's just my initial thought. And that was a new question for me, but you definitely push my thinking. Both, maybe I'll try with my daughter first and then think about how that gets integrated into some of the conversation scope of programming and lessons and activities that young people are working on in their high schools.
Yeah, I think the same. I haven't even started thinking about LinkedIn at all for my 7-year-old.
No, I wouldn't expect so.
Yeah, no, but I think same. I think as soon as, like probably high school's right, because that's when they can, start looking for jobs or things like that. But I do think though, what I'm like, if it doesn't mean that there couldn't be some sort of exercise before you're ready to actually be live on LinkedIn where you could talk to kids about what would you put on your LinkedIn page, right? And that could be interesting too. Yeah.
So one more here on this path. David and I are both in Minnesota, and we're in very rural areas of the state, where there are fewer businesses and industries, and the ones that do exist there, they constantly feel like they're being inundated with requests, and they get overwhelmed, financial resources and human resources to constantly kind of turn and try to find ways to help out the school. So what do you think like smaller districts could do to still build those partnerships that are productive?
So I want to start with a few things. Number one, I'm going to say it again, that schools can't do this alone. And so when we look around the country, there are workforce investment boards all over the country that are serving in some coordinated capacity roles for districts. And so my first thing I would say is that as a school or district, if you are not in a relationship or aware of what your local workforce investment board is doing to support this, please reach out to them. I'm also going to say that I think COVID taught us a lot about the value of virtual learning and virtual partnerships. And so as a school leader, we were putting on panels a lot. And we always were asking employers to come in person. And it kind of blew my mind that we actually could start asking employers to join us virtually. It would take way less of their time. It's way less of a lift. And even in some cases, we could record what they were saying or doing. And so there have been instances where we have had dentists literally zoom in with the permission of the patient that's there, and the cameras are in people's mouths. Or a plumber who is fixing a toilet in real time and it's on video. And so I also want to just uplift it doesn't have to be personal and one-on-one all the time. And especially in rural areas, it's hard for transportation. It's hard for the lift of how many employers there are and how much they're getting asked. And so let's definitely tap into recognizing that the world has a lot of remote working, and we can incorporate that type of zooming in, that type of virtual relationship. I've even seen some virtual internships, right, for companies that do virtual work for young people. And so let's not limit ourselves only to the local locations around us, but let's open ourselves up to the places that are having that type of work and are really reaching all over the country.
I want to jump in there really quick with one resource, and I don't know if you've ever heard of Explore by the Seat of Your Pants.
Okay. I have not. Tell me.
Absolutely fantastic. And what they do is it focuses more on STEM careers, but it's all of these scientists, engineers, people in the field. Like they've got someone who works with like penguins in Antarctica, and that person is available to join live with students in the classroom to have these interactions. And if you can't do that, they also record them all to YouTube, and they're all available for free for teachers to follow along with and to bring those people into the classroom space.
Oh, I just bookmarked it. There's so many amazing resources. We're going to add this to our list because that's a great example of we don't have to be one-on-one to get especially when we're talking about the exposure and exploration phase. Obviously, when we move into students preparing and training, we're going to need more, two-way. But I think in this space, right, what you just mentioned is also very similar to like Skype a Scientist, right, which is like kind of old school. It's been going on for a long time, and I'm sure it's probably changed its name. But I used to use that back in the day when we were studying certain topics. We would Skype in scientists to our classrooms. This is before COVID, right, so that young people could learn. So I think similar, and that what a great resource that is. So I just checked out the Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. I love it.
Okay, so the next thing that we've got for you here is we're going to challenge you a little bit and have you decide whether these are future focused or future flavored. They might have the appearance of future focused, but they're not really. So, and there's 10 of them. Ooh. So I think what we'll do is we'll just alternate. So, Alicia, we can start with you. And so I'll give you this one, and then we'll just go back and forth. So future focused or future flavored. The first one is every student receives a Chromebook, but instruction remains unchanged.
Oh, future flavored. We got to have intentional.
That's future bland.
Sure, not flavorless future.
Yeah, unseasoned future.
Yeah,
that's right.
A school holds one annual career day.
Absolutely future flavored, very small flavor.
Okay. Students complete interest inventories but never use the results.
Future flavored. I'm struggling with flavored because I don't feel like there's a lot of flavor in that one either.
Yeah. A business gives students a real community problem to solve.
Future focused if the teacher takes on the problem and it's integrated and connected to learning objectives in their classroom.
Seems like a natural project-based learning opportunity.
That's
right there.
Absolutely right. Yeah. And hopefully they're solving some community need and addressing that, which would also mean that it is a project-based learning experience that also is service learning.
Okay, next one is the school adds an AI course, but AI is prohibited everywhere else.
Future flavored. Future flavored.
We'll get you a future focused one eventually, I think. Next one is students create digital portfolios that include reflection, skills, and work samples.
Future focused if it's intentional and integrated into throughout all of their years.
Okay. A makerspace is available, but only as a reward for students who finish their regular work.
Future flavored.
Sad.
But we did help to create like a lab, right?
Yeah, career and innovation lab at Middle Years Academy here in Philadelphia.
Yeah, so I feel like we have lots of experience turning that into future focused.
That's right. But can I just say this? Like, we cannot have career activities be a reward. If that was the case, I literally would still be trying to get through high school, because we need it to be what is an inspiration and engagement strategy for all students.
Yeah.
Okay. Next one is, and I think this is for Shira. So
Yep.
teachers identify the transferable skills students are practicing during academic lessons.
Yes. I mean, they also can't just identify it. They also have to foster it and reinforce it. But yes, that would be an amazing strategy. Future focused for sure.
Okay. Students choose from several ways to demonstrate mastery.
Future focused, I would say. It sounds a lot like universal design too. So
we got you one.
Great, thanks.
And this is our last one. A high school has more advanced courses, but provides no new career exploration.
It's not even future flavored. It's just learning flavored.
All right. Well done.
I love that. I think that's a great, I'm going to use that. I hope you guys are okay, because I really love that term future flavored, because I think that's what a lot of people are doing. They're not future focused, but that's a great term. So I'm going to use that as well. Hopefully you guys don't mind.
Feel free, liberate anything you want. I hate to say the word stealing in the education world because it sounds
that's
bad.
Right. Liberate it. Oh, I love that.
Ideas.
Okay. Yeah. I'm going to do that. Yes.
Yeah. Educators are liberating all the time. Lots of ideas.
Yes, exactly.
Yes,
that's
I
just,
love that.
Part of our nature. We're going to move into our lightning round, but we're going to do this with a little bit of a twist. So with our lightning round, feel free to answer as short or as long as you need to get the point across. And again, it kind of goes alternating between David and I, who will ask these questions, but I don't want you to answer for yourself. I want you to answer for your sister.
Ooh, that's spicy. I love that.
And then you can confirm or deny the response, whether it's true or not, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So I think I'll start here with Alicia with this one here. So you get to answer for your sister. What is one future focus change a school could make this year without adding a new course position or expensive platform that is what you think Shira would say?
I think Shira would say the jobs are one of those 9 things that she answered earlier. What do you think, Shira? Did I do an okay job?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it's about adding in the future focused mindsets for our teachers.
Perfect.
Okay, so this is a 2-parter, so you both have to answer this. So this would be for Alicia. The top place for a cheesesteak sandwich in Philly.
I have to answer it for her?
No, I think it's reversed.
Oh, she's going to answer. Okay.
Yeah. I'm going to answer for you. Well, I think that there's obvious ones that everybody would choose, but I think Shira would say that she doesn't have any favorites. That's what I think you would say.
So I'm going to throw a contender out there. Cafe Carmela is kind of new to the game here in Philadelphia, and they are a rising star with their cheesesteak.
All right.
That was a hard one for me because I don't.
I know, because she's from Maryland. Yep.
So, and this might be difficult too. I don't know. We'll see. But Shira, what seasoning is essential for a Maryland crab boil?
Oh, obviously Old Bay.
Okay.
Right, Alicia? Am I right?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Okay.
Put Old Bay on everything.
It's like me with Frank's Red Hot sauce. It just goes on everything.
Yeah, exactly. And Old Bay's pretty like up and coming here in Philadelphia too. Lots of French fries with Old Bay.
All right, so I think we're on to Alicia with the next one. Does that sound right? Am I going in the right order? Did we lose track? Okay. So when Shira was in elementary or middle school, what did she want to be when she grew up? And I'm asking that question because I know you kind of talked about it as a trap earlier on. So I'm putting you into the trap.
Well, she should know this.
I should?
I've only ever wanted to be one thing. You were my first student.
I know, but I was okay. Anyway, when you were in high school, I was like
5.
So
No.
how would I? No, I'm just kidding. You've always wanted to be a teacher, but specifically, I know that you want to be a teacher on a beach.
That's right. So I'm still working on the teacher on a beach scene, but
you
when I was in elementary,
yeah.
I definitely wanted to be a teacher. Alicia just alluded, we are like over 10 years apart. And so she was my first student. I was babysitting. I was like pretending to teach with her, all the things.
That's right. That's right.
All right. The next one here is, so Shira, what can employers teach educators?
What can employers teach educators? And this is what Alicia would think. Is that right?
Yeah.
So I would think that Alicia would say that employers can teach educators how to support young people in like holding a job, like what it takes to hold a job. That's what I'm going to say.
Yeah. I mean, I think that employers can teach educators like all of those things. I think employers are educators anyway. So yeah, that's pretty close to what I would say.
Okay. Let's do the next one. And I think this one goes for Alicia again. I seem to be asking you all the questions and David seems to be asking Shira. That's just how it goes, I guess.
Yeah.
What's one non-educational book, series, or movie you think your sister's been into lately?
Well, I know that you're a Bravo girl.
Everything Bravo, all Bravo.
And I'm not, so it's hard for me to name one. But Shira's always talking about like Real Housewives, Bravo stuff. Yeah, I'm gonna go with that general. Yeah, I know.
Bravo. Yep. Bravo. Below Deck is my favorite. And so it goes along with the beach theme and the water and what, right? And so maybe they're going to need a Below Deck principal one day that I could join.
Okay. Last one here of the lightning round. You both have to answer for each other. And I'll just tell you that we now have a Integrate This podcast guest playlist. So these songs will be on the playlist. But Shira, what would be Alicia's keynote walk-up song if she's doing a conference for us tomorrow? And Alicia, what would be Shira's?
Okay, I got Alicia's. I'm gonna go with, I also really love this song and I think it demonstrates a lot of our Innovageous values. The song is Try Everything by Shakira. I love that song. And it's also from Zootopia.
Yeah, I was gonna say a Zootopia song.
Yes, I love it. What about me, Alicia? It's my walk-up song.
Well, I know I always overthink things. This is why it takes a long time for me to answer. But I know that like I can see you dancing to it. I can see you dancing to it. I'm just having a hard time picking the song. Can I phone a friend? Can I phone a sister?
No, come on. You want to ask me? I'm going to say.
I do want to ask you. I don't think we've ever talked about this.
How about This Girl Is on Fire, Alicia Keys?
Okay.
That comes in my head as well sometimes when I'm like, all right, here we go.
All right.
That's what I'm going to say.
They will both be added to the playlist.
Sorry.
Okay, I love that.
And we'll send it to you too. So
cool.
Yeah. We're kind of at the end here. I can again thank you guys so much for hanging out with us and having such great conversation. It's amazing how fast the time just goes by when you've got great people to talk to. So before we do let you go, I do want to give you a chance to plug anything that you have coming up, anything with Innovageous or websites or contact information, socials, that sort of stuff. And just give you that chance right here.
Yeah. Well, of course, you can always reach Alicia and I. Our website is innovageous.com. You can reach Alicia and I at Alicia at or Shira at innovageous.com. I would say some things you should check out are our website. There are a ton of resources on there. We also offer several leadership continuing education courses around leading future-focused schools, around building community partnerships, special education leadership, MTSS. And this fall, we are offering a community of practice for school teams to join virtually to continue to build both skills that are important for young people. So if what we talked about today is of interest, feel free to join us, and you can learn all about that on our website. And Alicia, anything else you want to add?
No, I mean, you covered it. I think our website in particular has lots of resources and like free resources to download, especially some of the things we talked about around community engagement today as well.
Awesome.
Perfect. I've started a list of things to link in the show description, so we'll add all of those things, and people will be able to just click on them when they are listening or watching the program.
Great. Awesome. It was so great to join you all today. We really hope people visit our website, pick up a copy of Leading Future Focused Schools, and just connect with us so we can continue the conversation.
That's right.
Wonderful. Thanks, Alicia. Thank you, Shira.
Thank you.